Hello and welcome. I'm Kamal Takodra. I'm a technical marketing engineer in the Aruba switching business unit. I'm here today to talk to you about some parity feature and enhancements in our recent release in June of 10.12 AOS-CX switching software. I'm going to be covering first hop security, IP lockdown, ARP Protection, Multicast equal cost Multipath, control plane ACL logs, and private VLANs. First of all, let's talk about IP lockdown. So we've now introduced dynamic IP lockdown for the 8325 and the 10,000 products. We support both IPv4 and IPv6 with dynamic IP lockdown. This feature is used to prevent IP source address spoofing. And you can see from the table below the current supported platforms for dynamic IP lockdown. And you can see that we've now introduced in 10.12 to the 8325 as well as the 10,000. Just a bit of familiarization and refresher on IP lockdown. It's used to prevent IP source address spoofing on a port basis. When the dynamic IP source lockdown is enabled, IP traffic received on a port is forwarded only if the IP address, VLAN, MAC address and port matches the IP binding entry. The IP binding entries can be either statically configured or learnt from DHCP snooping feature. And as a bit of a refresher, here's a basic config for dynamic IP lockdown for both IPv4 and IPv6 can be applied to either an interface or a link aggregation group. And then you want to see what's configured on a specific interface for IP lockdown. You have various show commands which show you the interfaces or link aggregations that have IP lockdown configured. Let's now move on to ARP Protection. ARP Protection is now also available on our 8360 product, and current support as of 10.12 is shown in the table below, and we can see that the 8360 is now added to this. We all know that ARP is used to resolve IP against MAC addresses on a broadcast network but has no built-in security, and that's the reason we have ARP Protection to stop overwhelming the switch control plane, as well as stopping bad actors masquerading as trusted gateways and serving out incorrect ARPs. Let's cover dynamic ARP inspection functionality. It's enabled or disabling of IP ARP inspection can be done at a VLAN level. You define a member of port of a VLAN as either trusted or untrusted. Only ARP traffic on untrusted ports is subject to checks and inspected. Please note that routed ports will always be treated as trusted. DHCP binding tables are used to check ARP packets. Let's cover the configuration. So you basically, in the VLAN context, you enable ARP inspection. Then by default that means that all ports that are allocated to that VLAN are by default untrusted, and I've shown a configuration here which cannot be seen. This is a hidden config, no ARP inspection trust. That's the default configuration. And if you want to make a port trusted, i.e. not to be inspected, then you just type in ARP inspection trust and that port will no longer be inspected. Multicast equal cost multipath. We have now introduced this feature for our 6200 platform. This means that multicast traffic is load shared across equal cost multipath links when we have multiple sources available. This configuration is on by default on the platforms, and we can see below all platforms that support multicast ECMP, with the 6200 being the recent addition. Here is a basic overview of how multicast ECMP works. In this example, R1's route to S1 and S2 subnet is equal cost multipath via R2 and R3. For source 1, group 1, stream from R1 hashes towards R2. For S2 group 2 stream, R1 hashes towards R3. Joins are sent by R1 to either R2 or R3 based on the above hashing described. Traffic from S1 and S2 are load balanced between R2 and R3. Just some additional notes. Multicast ECMP requires that all the next hop routers have to be PIM enabled, i.e. R2 and R3 in this example. And we see load sharing being observed when the number of sources are large. With fewer sources, we do expect to see maybe a skewed distribution. Let's cover logging for control plane access control entries. We now support logging for events on control plane access control entries, and we support this on all CX platforms. Prior to 10.12 software, the ACL for log for number of packets matching access control lists only operated for the permit and deny actions on access control lists that were for ingress or egress, or typically on ports except for the control plane. Now we can have logging of ACLs directed towards the control plane. You'll see logging messages approximately every 5 minutes. In this example, I've shown a basic configuration where we are now logging SSH traffic on an ACL, and then we are applying this on the control plane in a specific VRF. You can see that we can have a look at the hit counts on a specific ACL. This was always in place and is no change. However, now if we take a look at the logs, and we've just tried a show events and we've included the keyword control in our filter, we can see that an IPv6 host here has connected to the switch, which has an IPv6 address, and it's logged in the event log. We also see the amount of hits on the ACL, and this is repeated approximately every 5 minutes. Here we have a similar example, however this time we are just looking at an IPv4 access list. The access list again is an SSH access list, and we've applied that to the control plane. We apply that to the control plane. Again, we can see the hit count on the IPv4 ACL. However, what's new is we now can see the logs showing that a source of 10.10.10.151, access is 10.10.10.254, which is a IP address on the switch using SSH. We also see the hit counts towards the control plane in the event log. So this should help you troubleshoot and give you more visibility in the control plane as required. Now on to private VLANs. Private VLANs partition a VLAN by grouping multiple sets of ports that need a layer 2 traffic isolation from one another into an independent broadcast subdomain. Existing platforms that cover private VLANs are the 6200, 6300, 6400, 8325, 8360 and the 10,000. In this 10.12 software update, PVLANs are now supported on the 8100, 6100, 6000 and the 4100i platforms, and the details are shown on the table below. For further details on this feature, please see an update dedicated to this on this channel. Thank you for watching. Hope that was informative and useful to you.